Let's hear what people in Gaza are saying about the news.
For sure, it's a feeling of joy. We have been in this war and suffering for 2 years. As soon as we heard the news, we couldn't believe it because we were so happy. We had to ask for confirmation. Now we're waiting for the news to be implemented so that this war and this suffering and ethnic cleansing in Gaza ends.
This is a joy to be recorded in history. We are tired. We have been displaced, and this is the day we have been waiting for. The day of relief from God. We have been displaced more than once from one place to another. This is a godsend day of relief.
Let's get more now. I'm joined by Fawaz Gerges. He is a professor of Middle Eastern politics and international relations at London School of Economics. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. How do you see this moment for the future of Israel and Hamas?
Well, I think it's a moment of hope. It's a moment of joy for 2.2 million Palestinians. It's a moment of joy for the families of the hostages who have been in Gaza for more than 2 years. I think it's the beginning of the end of the humanitarian catastrophe that Gaza has basically been under in the past 2 years, the pain, the suffering, the loss. So I think we should really celebrate this particular moment. As you've heard from the Palestinians in Gaza, the human loss is unbearable, unimaginable. 90% of the infrastructure in Gaza has been destroyed. The agricultural land, 200,000 tons of explosives have been dropped by Israel on Gaza. 2,000 children have been killed. So, I think it's a moment of hope, it's a moment of joy. But I think what comes next is extremely complex and extremely dangerous.
How delicate then is the situation? Because you've been looking at the trajectory, observing it quite closely over the past 2 years. There have been many negotiation efforts that have fallen through. Do you think that this is really the end of the war in Gaza, given that there are still so many sticking points to be worked out before there can be a sustainable peace?
Sadly, I don't. I don't think this is the end of Israel's war in Gaza. I think it's the end of all-out war. So there's a next phase. Because, you see, the 21 points, President Trump's 21 point, is littered with minefields. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear. He will never pull out all Israeli forces from Gaza. He would like to establish a buffer zone in Gaza. What I have heard in the past, 24 hours is not reassuring. Hamas said that the agreement basically stipulates the end of the war. Yet the Americans and the Israelis say it's the first phase of the war, the release of all 48 hostages in return for 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and captives. Will Hamas disarm? I doubt it very much. Will Israel basically pull out all its forces from Gaza? I doubt it very much. Who will run Gaza the morning after? Hamas and the various Palestinian groups have made it very clear. They would like the Palestinian Authority to be in charge. Yet President Trump and Israel insist on a board of peace made up basically mainly foreigners and hardly any role for the Palestinian Authority. And final point on your question here, as a scholar of the Middle East, I think the Middle East has been a graveyard for political optimism. There are many things that could go wrong. The question for me is, will President Trump have the attention span to really follow up after the end of the first phase, the exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners?
So then how do you, given all of that you've just said, how do you see the second phase now proceeding?
Well, I think everything really has been swept, behind the rug, the carpet. Because I think, keep in mind that the priority for the United States and Israel is the release of the 48 hostages as opposed to really focusing on the details, because the devil lies in the details. So the next phase, this is very difficult. Let me basically qualify what I have said. Even though I am a bit skeptical and cynical, and I should be, I think what we have seen is the involvement of pivotal regional powers in providing guarantees. You have Turkey, you have Egypt, you have Qatar, and now you have the United States. So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now has a limited wiggle room. He cannot really violate the ceasefire at his own inclination whenever, even though he will come under tremendous pressure from his extremist coalition members. And today's meeting in Israel is very important. The Israeli cabinet will meet today to approve the deal. So we'll have to see later on today. But given that the United States is now actively involved, given that the regional powers are actively involved, I think we might see what I call a gradual facing of the Israeli war and the beginning of a new authority. Most probably the Arab state will be involved, and I take it that the Palestinian Authority will also be involved, as well as the Americans, in the morning after.
And I'd just like to ask you quickly before we go, because we've spoken, about the Israeli role and, Trump's very clear pressure actually on Netanyahu now being exerted. How do you see the pressure on Hamas at the moment, and the ability to exert that pressure on them, also to make sure that they keep track here in negotiations? And how do you see this moment also overall for the Palestinian politic, which we know is very fragmented, but is also at a very critical moment as more and more countries around the world recognize Palestinian statehood? How do you see the Palestinian people being able to come to this moment right now?
Well, I think you're asking really several questions in one, very important questions. I think the first question is, Hamas has come under tremendous pressure, not just by the Americans and the Israeli military campaign, but by Arab states, including Qatar and Turkey and Egypt. And I think my take on it, my understanding is that Hamas wanted Turkey and Qatar to provide guarantees. And it might have received guarantees from the Qataris and Turkey, because the Qatari Prime Minister said the first phase of the agreement will mean the end of the war. And this is really the talking point of Hamas, point one. And of course, Hamas suffered, great losses over the past 2 years. Not to mention is that Hamas is fully aware of the humanitarian catastrophe and what the people in Gaza have been going through, and also some Palestinians are very critical of Hamas. The second point I want to say about, I think the Israeli government will have to come to terms with Palestinian self-determination, even though there is really no, most Israeli politicians, I would say the overwhelming majority of Israeli politicians oppose the establishment of a Palestinian state. Now you have 157 states out of 193 states in the United Nations who have recognized Palestine as a state. So the reality is now Israel will have to face, it has a moment, a reckoning moment. And the reckoning moment is to recognize basic Palestinian rights, the rights of Palestinians to self-determination. You and I and your guests have been talking about the ceasefire, the likelihood that the ceasefire could really mean the end of the war. I think regardless of what happens today and tomorrow and the morning after, without recognizing the basic rights of the Palestinians, without allowing the Palestinians the right for self-determination, without reconciliations, genuine reconciliation between Israel and Palestine, you will never have lasting peace in the region. This is the lesson that we have learned since 1947.
Thank you so much, Middle East expert Fawaz Gerges. We appreciate you sharing that with us.